When you reach the age of 70, something very strange begins to happen inside the heart. The world around you becomes quieter, but your memories become louder. You may sit in a silent room, yet your mind travels back 50 years in only a few seconds. Old conversations return, old mistakes return, old pain returns. Sometimes, even the faces of people who hurt you long ago suddenly appear in your thoughts, as if no time has passed at all. At this age, many people finally understand a painful truth. Growing old is not only about wrinkles, slower steps, or gray hair. The hardest part of aging is carrying emotional weight for too many years. There are people who spend their entire lives carrying anger. Some carry guilt. Some carry disappointment. Some carry regret. And by the time they reach 70, their hearts feel heavier than their bodies. A man once said something heartbreaking during an interview in a nursing home. He looked out the window for almost a minute before speaking. Then he quietly said, "I spent my whole life trying to win arguments that no longer matter." That sentence stayed with many people because it revealed something deep and painful. So much of life is spent holding on to things that steal peace from the soul. At 70, peace becomes more valuable than pride. There was a woman named Eleanor who lived alone after her husband passed away. Every evening, she sat beside a small lamp in her living room and looked through old photo albums. But she was not smiling at the memories. She was crying over them. For years, she blamed herself for not saying, "I love you," more often to her husband before he died. One day, her granddaughter visited her and gently asked, "Grandma, why do you always look sad when you look at these pictures?" Eleanor answered with tears in her eyes, "Because I keep remembering everything I should have done better." Her granddaughter sat quietly beside her for a moment and then softly replied, "But Grandpa smiled in every single photo." That sentence broke something open inside Eleanor's heart. She realized she had spent years focusing on her mistakes instead of the love they shared. Many older people do this without realizing it. They replay painful memories again and again like a movie that never ends. They torture themselves with questions that have no answers anymore. What if I had done things differently? What if I had stayed? What if I had spoken sooner? What if I had loved better? But the past is a closed door. No amount of suffering can reopen it. One of the hardest things to let go of in old age is regret. Regret quietly steals joy from the present moment. It sits beside you during dinner. It follows you into bed at night. It whispers into your heart during quiet mornings. And the painful thing is this: many regrets come from being too hard on yourself. At 70, you finally begin to understand that you were never supposed to be perfect. You were only supposed to be human. You made decisions with the knowledge you had at the time. You survived difficult years. You endured heartbreak, loss, financial struggles, sickness, disappointments, and loneliness. You carried responsibilities while fighting battles nobody else saw. Yet many older people judge their younger selves with cruel eyes. They forget how exhausted they once were. They forget how afraid they once felt. They forget how much pressure life placed on them. Peace begins the moment you forgive yourself for being imperfect. There was an old mechanic named Walter who spent 40 years working long hours to support his family. He rarely took vacations. He missed school events. He was often too tired to play with his children. When he retired, guilt consumed him. One afternoon, he finally confessed his sadness to his son. He expected anger. Instead, his son smiled gently and said, "Dad, we never doubted your love. We saw your sacrifice every single day." Walter cried harder than he had cried in decades. Sometimes, the forgiveness you need most has already been given. You are simply refusing to accept it. As people grow older, they also begin carrying another heavy burden, the opinions of others. For decades, many people live their lives trying to please everyone around them. They worry about judgment. They fear criticism. They hide their true selves to gain acceptance. But age has a way of revealing something important. No matter how hard you try, you cannot make everyone happy. Some people will misunderstand you. Some people will criticize you. Some people will never appreciate your kindness. And that is okay. At 70, inner peace often begins when you stop explaining yourself to people who already decided not to understand you. There is freedom in no longer needing everyone's approval. An elderly woman once said, "The older I became, the less interested I was in proving myself." That is wisdom. Young people chase validation. Older souls begin chasing peace. And peace requires letting go. Let go of old shame. Let go of impossible expectations. Let go of the need to be perfect. Let go of the endless battle to please everyone. Because the truth is simple and painful. Life becomes much lighter when you stop carrying what no longer belongs in your heart. Many older adults secretly feel tired deep inside their souls, not because of physical weakness, but because emotional pain has exhausted them for decades. Some still carry childhood wounds. Some still carry betrayals from 30 years ago. Some still carry anger toward family members. Some still carry words spoken during painful moments long ago. But holding on to pain does not punish the people who hurt you. It punishes you. Inner peace arrives quietly. It does not come through wealth, success, or status. It comes when the heart finally learns how to release what it can no longer change. A peaceful old age is not built by controlling life. It is built by surrendering unnecessary suffering. And maybe tonight, as you sit quietly after a long life filled with memories, struggles, victories, and losses, your soul is asking you one simple question. What am I still carrying that I no longer need? That question can change everything. Because sometimes the greatest act of healing is not gaining something new. Sometimes it is finally letting go. By the time a person reaches 70 years old, they have met hundreds, maybe even thousands of people. Some brought love into their life. Some brought laughter. Some brought unforgettable memories. But some brought pain. And one of the deepest wounds people carry into old age is not the pain of strangers. It is the pain caused by people they loved deeply. A son who stopped calling. A daughter who became distant. A friend who disappeared during difficult times. A husband who never understood. A wife who carried bitterness for years. A sibling who turned family into conflict. A person you sacrificed for, who slowly forgot your value. These wounds cut deeper because love was involved. Many older people sit quietly with these invisible heartbreaks every single day. They smile in front of others, but deep inside, there is sadness that never fully healed. There was a 73-year-old man named Richard who visited the same small diner every Friday morning. He always sat alone in the corner booth near the window. The waitress knew his order by heart: black coffee, toast, and eggs. One rainy morning, she finally asked him gently, "Why do you always look out the window like you're waiting for someone?" Richard stayed silent for a long moment. Then he softly answered, "My son." He explained that years earlier, after a terrible argument, his son stopped speaking to him. Pride grew between them like a wall. Months became years. Years became silence. Richard checked his phone every day hoping for a message that never came. "I thought time would fix it," he whispered. But time only made the silence louder. That is the cruel thing about emotional pain in old age. Silence becomes heavier than words. Many people reach their later years still holding on to broken relationships that continue hurting them from the inside. But one painful truth must eventually be accepted. Not everyone will love you the way you deserve to be loved. Some people are emotionally unavailable. Some are selfish. Some are wounded themselves. Some never learned how to show love properly. And sadly, some people simply take kindness for granted. This realization hurts deeply because older adults often spent decades sacrificing for others. Parents give up sleep, dreams, money, comfort, and energy for their children. Spouses sacrifice years trying to hold families together. Friends remain loyal during difficult seasons. Then one day, They realize the love they gave was not always returned equally. That heartbreak can become poison if it stays inside too long. There are elderly people who go to bed every night replaying old betrayals in their minds. They relive painful conversations over and over. They wonder why certain people changed. They ask themselves what they did wrong. But peace cannot grow in a heart trapped inside yesterday's pain. At some point, healing requires acceptance. Acceptance does not mean what happened was fair. It does not mean the betrayal did not hurt. It does not mean the abandonment was acceptable. It simply means you stop allowing that pain to control the rest of your life. A woman named Margaret learned this lesson at 71. For nearly 15 years, she carried bitterness toward her younger sister after a family inheritance caused division between them. They stopped speaking completely. Holidays became lonely. Family gatherings became uncomfortable. Margaret spent years telling herself, "She destroyed our relationship." But deep inside, the anger was destroying Margaret herself. One evening, after sitting alone in her quiet house, she suddenly realized something heartbreaking. She had allowed one painful chapter to steal 15 years of peace. 15 years. That night, she wrote something inside her journal. "I cannot force people to become who I hoped they would be." Those words changed her life. One of the greatest sources of suffering in old age is expecting people to become different. Many people spend decades waiting for apologies that never come, waiting for appreciation that never comes, waiting for love that never fully arrives. But peace begins when expectations loosen their grip on the heart. At 70, your emotional energy becomes precious. You no longer have endless years to waste on resentment. You no longer have the strength for constant emotional battles. You begin understanding that peace is more valuable than winning emotional wars. Some relationships will heal, some will not, and that truth must be accepted with grace. There are people who may never understand your sacrifices, people who may never acknowledge your kindness, people who may never recognize how deeply they hurt you. But carrying bitterness into old age only extends the suffering. A retired school teacher named Helen once said something beautiful during an interview. "I finally realized forgiveness is not something you give others. It is something you give yourself." That sentence carries enormous wisdom. Forgiveness does not erase memories. It does not erase consequences. It does not suddenly repair broken trust, but it releases the heavy chains wrapped around your own heart. Many older adults unknowingly become prisoners of emotional pain from decades ago. And the saddest part is this: the people who hurt them often moved on long ago. Meanwhile, they continue reliving the pain every day. Inner peace cannot survive inside a heart filled with unresolved bitterness. Sometimes, letting go means accepting that closure may never come. No final conversation, no perfect apology, no dramatic reunion, just acceptance. And strangely, acceptance often brings more peace than revenge ever could. There is another painful reality: many older people face loneliness. As years pass, social circles become smaller. Friends pass away, families become busy, children build their own lives. Phone calls become less frequent, and loneliness can quietly convince older adults that they are forgotten or unimportant. But your value does not decrease simply because the world became busy. You still matter. Your life still matters. Your presence still carries meaning. Aging sometimes creates invisible people society overlooks. But the human soul still longs to be seen, heard, and loved no matter the age. This is why emotional healing matters so deeply in old age. Because the final chapters of life should not be dominated by resentment and emotional exhaustion. They should be filled with gentleness, reflection, grace, peace. There comes a moment when the heart grows tired of carrying pain that no longer changes anything. And perhaps that moment is now. Perhaps your soul is exhausted from replaying disappointments. Perhaps your heart is tired of waiting for certain people to become who you hoped they would be. Perhaps you are finally realizing that holding on to pain has stolen too many beautiful days already. If so, then maybe life is inviting you into a different kind of freedom. Not the freedom of changing others, but the freedom of releasing them. Because one of the most powerful things a 70-year-old soul can say is this: I will not spend the rest of my life carrying pain that no longer serves my peace. There comes a quiet moment in old age when a person finally realizes something life tried to teach them all along. Very little was ever truly under their control. At 70, this truth can either bring fear or bring freedom. For many people, most of life was spent trying to manage everything perfectly. They tried to control outcomes, relationships, finances, family decisions, and the future itself. They worried constantly. They carried responsibility on their shoulders every day for decades. Parents worried about their children. Workers worried about money. Spouses worried about marriages. Caretakers worried about everyone except themselves. And slowly, without even noticing it, anxiety became a permanent part of life. Many older adults still live this way, even after retirement, even after the children are grown, even after life has clearly moved into a different season. Their minds continue fighting battles that no longer need to be fought. A 78-year-old woman named Patricia spent years trying to control every detail of her family's life. She constantly called her children to give advice. She worried about their marriages, careers, parenting styles, and finances. At first, she believed she was simply helping. But over time, her children began calling less often. Conversations became shorter. Family gatherings became tense. One afternoon, Patricia sat alone at her kitchen table after another difficult phone call with her daughter. With tears in her eyes, she whispered something painful. "I don't know how to stop worrying." That sentence speaks for millions of older people. Because worry can become an addiction. Some people worry so long that they no longer know how to live without it. But eventually, age teaches a painful lesson. You cannot protect everyone from life. Your children will make mistakes. People will make choices you disagree with. Life will unfold in unexpected ways, and no amount of anxiety can fully control the future. This truth becomes especially difficult for older adults because many spent their entire lives being protectors. They solved problems. They carried families through storms. People depended on them. But old age asks something different from the soul. It asks for surrender. Not surrender in weakness. Surrender in wisdom. There is wisdom in understanding that constant control steals peace from the heart. A retired farmer named Joseph once shared a beautiful story during an interview. Every spring, he planted seeds carefully across his land. He worked hard, watered faithfully, and prayed for good weather. But after many decades, he realized something important. There were parts only God controlled. He said softly. He could prepare the soil. He could plant carefully. He could work honestly. But he could not command the rain. He could not stop storms. He could not force the harvest. Life works the same way. There are things we can guide, and things we must release. Many older adults suffer deeply because they continue fighting against realities they cannot change. They fight aging itself. They fight time. They fight the decisions of others. They fight the past. They fight loneliness. They fight uncertainty. And this endless resistance exhausts the spirit. One of the greatest gifts of old age is learning how to soften instead of constantly struggle. Aging is not only the weakening of the body. Sometimes it is the invitation for the soul to finally rest. There was an elderly man named Leonard who became deeply depressed after retiring. For 45 years, his identity came from his work. He managed employees, solved problems, and stayed busy every hour of the day. But after retirement, silence entered his life. Without work, he felt useless. He tried controlling everything around him to feel important again. He criticized small things constantly. He became frustrated easily. Nothing felt right anymore. One evening, his wife gently said something that changed him forever. You spent your whole life carrying the world, she whispered. Maybe now it's time to put some of it down. That sentence broke through his heart. Many older people are carrying responsibilities they no longer need to carry emotionally. Some still feel responsible for fixing every family problem. Some still feel guilty when adult children struggle. Some still believe rest is laziness. Some feel uncomfortable when life becomes slower, but peace often arrives through acceptance, not control. At 70, life begins teaching a quieter rhythm, a slower morning, a longer sunset, a peaceful walk, a calm conversation, a simple cup of coffee beside the window. These small moments become sacred when the mind stops racing endlessly. Unfortunately, many people miss these beautiful moments because they are trapped inside worry. They worry about health. They worry about money. They worry about death. They worry about being forgotten. Fear becomes noise inside the mind. But there is something deeply healing about finally admitting, I cannot control everything. Those words are not weakness. They are freedom, because the need for control often comes from fear itself. Fear of uncertainty, fear of loss, fear of change, fear of being vulnerable. But aging naturally brings uncertainty, and fighting reality only creates suffering. An older woman named Clara once described her emotional healing in a beautiful way. She said, "When I stopped trying to control every chapter, I finally started enjoying the story." What wisdom! Many people spend their lives gripping tightly onto everything around them. But peace comes when the hands finally loosen. This does not mean giving up on life. It means trusting life more gently. It means understanding that not every problem belongs to you. Not every conflict requires your involvement. Not every outcome depends entirely on your shoulders. You are allowed to rest emotionally. At 70, you have already carried enough. There is another hidden truth many older adults eventually discover: control often pushes people away. Children want guidance, not constant correction. Loved ones want understanding, not pressure. Friends want peace, not judgment. Sometimes, relationships heal when control disappears, because love grows best in spaces where people feel accepted, not managed. One elderly father admitted something heartbreaking after years of tension with his son. "I kept trying to shape him into my version of success," he said. "I forgot to simply love him." That realization came late, but it brought healing. And perhaps that is what old age slowly teaches us all: love matters more than control. Peace matters more than perfection. Presence matters more than pressure. As the years pass, the soul begins craving softer things. Not competition, not dominance, not endless stress, just peace. Real peace. The kind of peace that allows you to sit quietly without replaying every fear in your mind. The kind of peace that lets you trust tomorrow without trying to control every detail of it. The kind of peace that allows your heart to finally breathe again. And maybe tonight, life is gently asking you to release the exhausting burden of controlling everything around you. Maybe it is time to trust that some things will unfold without your constant worry. Maybe it is time to stop carrying the entire world on your shoulders. Because after 70 years of surviving life's storms, you deserve more than stress. You deserve rest. You deserve gentleness. And above all, you deserve peace. There is a silent fear many people carry deep inside their hearts, but few speak about openly. It is the fear of becoming old, not just older in age, but older in spirit, older in body, older in appearance, older in the eyes of the world. At 70, many people begin noticing changes they once ignored. The mirror looks different now. The body moves slower. Energy fades more quickly. Names are forgotten sometimes. Stairs feel steeper. Nights feel longer. And perhaps the hardest part of all, the world starts treating you differently. There was a time when people looked at you with expectation. Now some look at you with sympathy. Others barely notice you at all. For many older adults, this invisible feeling becomes deeply painful. A retired woman named Gloria once said through tears, "I spent my whole life taking care of everyone. Now I feel like the world no longer sees me. That sentence carries a sadness many elderly people understand completely. Aging can sometimes feel like slowly disappearing in a society obsessed with youth. Television celebrates young faces. Social media celebrates young bodies. Advertisements celebrate young lifestyles. And quietly, older people begin feeling left behind. Some become ashamed of wrinkles, ashamed of gray hair, ashamed of needing rest, ashamed of slower movement, ashamed of aging itself. But growing old was never something to be ashamed of. It is proof that you survived. Every wrinkle carries a story. Every gray hair carries experience. Every scar carries survival. Every slow step carries wisdom earned through years of living. Young people often chase beauty. Older souls begin discovering meaning. And meaning is far more valuable. There was an 80-year-old man named Daniel who visited a local park every morning. He walked slowly with a cane while children played nearby. One day, a teenage boy laughed quietly at the way Daniel struggled to sit on a bench. Instead of becoming angry, Daniel smiled gently and said something unforgettable. "If you are lucky, one day you will walk like this too." The boy became silent immediately. Because old age is not a punishment. It is a privilege denied to many. Millions of people never reach 70. Many never get the chance to watch grandchildren grow. Many never see another sunrise after difficult illnesses or tragic accidents. Yet older adults often spend these precious years focused only on what they lost youth, lost strength, lost beauty, lost opportunities, lost people. But what if aging is not only about loss? What if it is also about transformation? At 70, life begins stripping away illusions. You realize how little material things truly matter. You realize time is precious. You realize peace matters more than status. You realize love matters more than money. You realize quiet moments carry more meaning than noisy achievements. These realizations are gifts, but fear prevents many people from embracing them. Some older adults become trapped trying to remain young forever. They fight time endlessly inside their minds. They compare themselves to younger generations. They mourn every physical change. And because of this, they miss the beauty hidden inside aging itself. Aging softens certain parts of the soul. It teaches patience. It teaches gratitude. It teaches compassion. It teaches perspective. An elderly grandmother once shared something beautiful during an interview. "When I was young," she said, "I worried about being beautiful. Now I worry about being kind." That is the wisdom age brings. The older the soul becomes, the more clearly it sees what truly matters. But fear can still whisper cruel lies into the heart. You are no longer important. You are becoming weak. You are a burden. You are forgotten. These thoughts destroy inner peace. And sadly, many elderly people suffer silently under the weight of these fears. A man named Arthur stopped attending family gatherings after retirement. He felt embarrassed about his hearing loss and slower speech. He believed people found him boring now. One Christmas, his granddaughter sat beside him quietly and asked, "Grandpa, why don't you talk much anymore?" Arthur looked down sadly and whispered, "I think people are tired of listening to old stories." His granddaughter smiled warmly and replied, "But those stories are our family." Arthur cried softly after hearing those words. Older people often underestimate their value. But wisdom is valuable. Experience is valuable. Presence is valuable. The younger world may move quickly, but deep human truth still lives inside older generations. The problem is that fear blinds people from seeing their own worth. Fear says aging makes life smaller, but sometimes aging makes life deeper. At 70, many distractions finally fade away. The endless race for approval begins slowing down. The pressure to impress others weakens. The soul becomes more honest, and honesty creates space for peace. One of the greatest emotional freedoms in old age comes when you stop apologizing for aging. You stop hiding your wrinkles. You stop feeling embarrassed by slower movement. You stop pretending to have endless energy. You stop comparing your present self to your younger self. Instead, you begin honoring the person you became through survival, because survival changes people, and anyone who has lived 70 years has survived things younger people cannot fully understand. You survived heartbreak. You survived grief. You survived disappointments. You survived financial struggles. You survived fear. You survived seasons when you thought life might break you completely. And yet, you are still here. That alone deserves respect. There is something deeply peaceful about accepting your age without shame. Not because aging is easy, but because resisting it only creates unnecessary suffering. The body changes. Life changes. People change. Time changes everything. But the soul still has the ability to choose peace. An old man once sat beside the ocean watching the sunset. A younger person nearby asked him, "Does getting old scare you?" The man smiled softly before answering. "No," he said. "Fighting it scared me. Accepting it brought peace." That answer contains enormous wisdom. Many people waste precious years fighting reality instead of embracing it gently. But aging itself is not the enemy. Fear is the enemy. Fear steals joy from today by worrying about tomorrow. Fear steals gratitude by focusing only on loss. Fear steals peace by convincing the heart that aging means becoming less valuable. But you are not less valuable because you are older. In many ways, you are becoming more real. At 70, masks begin falling away. Pretending becomes exhausting. The soul begins craving authenticity instead of perfection. And perhaps that is one of the greatest gifts of old age. You finally stop trying to become someone else and begin accepting yourself completely. So tonight, as you sit quietly reflecting on your life, remember this gentle truth. Growing old is not something to fear. It is something to honor. Because every year you lived carries lessons, memories, tears, love, and strength that shape the person you are today. And that person still matters deeply. One of the quietest heartbreaks people carry into old age is not always about what happened in life. Sometimes it is about what never happened at all. The dreams that never came true. The plans that fell apart. The love story that ended too soon. The opportunities that disappeared. The life you imagined but never lived. By 70, almost everyone has experienced this pain in some form. Very few lives unfold exactly as expected. Some people dreamed of growing old beside the love of their life, only to face loneliness instead. Some dreamed of a close family, yet now sit beside silent phones. Some imagined financial security but spent years struggling. Some hoped retirement would feel joyful, but instead it feels empty and unfamiliar. And quietly deep inside many older hearts, there lies a hidden sentence. "This is not how I thought my life would turn out." That sentence carries enormous sorrow. A woman named Carol once shared her story during a small community gathering for seniors. She spoke slowly, with tears resting in her eyes. "When I was young," she said, "I thought life would become easier after all my sacrifices. I thought there would finally be peace." Then she looked down at her hands and whispered, but life kept changing the story. Many people understand exactly what she meant. Life rarely follows our carefully written plans. At 20, people imagine endless possibilities. At 40, responsibilities begin shaping reality. At 70, many finally look back and compare their dreams to the life they actually lived. And for some, that comparison becomes painful. Regret enters quietly. I should have taken more chances. I should have traveled. I should have left that unhappy relationship. I should have said yes. I should have said no. I should have followed my dream. The human heart has a dangerous habit of romanticizing the life that never happened. And because of this, many older adults accidentally stop appreciating the beauty that did happen. A retired man named Samuel spent years feeling bitter because he never became a successful musician. Music was his greatest passion when he was young, but life forced him into factory work to support his family. For decades, he quietly carried disappointment. One evening, his daughter sat beside him while looking through old family photos. She smiled warmly and said, "Dad, every good memory in our childhood had your music in it." Samuel became emotional immediately. He suddenly realized something powerful. Maybe his dream did come true, just not in the way he expected. Many older people fail to see the hidden meaning inside ordinary lives. Society teaches people to measure success through money, fame, status, or achievement. But when people grow older, those things often lose importance. What matters most in the end becomes much simpler. Did you love? Did you help others? Did you survive difficult seasons? Did you show kindness? Did your presence make someone feel less alone? These are the things that remain, not titles, not expensive possessions, not public recognition. At 70, many people finally understand that a meaningful life and a perfect life are not the same thing. Perfection does not exist. Every life contains disappointment. Every family contains pain. Every person carries invisible wounds. Even the people who looked successful from the outside often struggled privately. A widowed grandmother named Ruth once said something unforgettable. "When I stopped mourning the life I imagined, I finally started appreciating the life I actually had." That sentence contains deep wisdom, because many people unknowingly spend their final years emotionally trapped between reality and fantasy. They keep staring at closed doors instead of noticing the blessings still standing beside them. Aging invites people into a different kind of vision. Not the vision of ambition, but the vision of gratitude. Gratitude changes everything. Suddenly, small things become beautiful again. A peaceful morning, a familiar voice on the phone, birds outside the window, a warm blanket, a slow conversation, a quiet sunset, a grandchild's laughter, another day alive. These moments may seem ordinary to younger people rushing through life, but older souls understand their true value. There was an elderly man living in a small apartment after losing nearly everything financially late in life. A visitor once apologized for his simple living conditions. The man smiled softly and replied, "This little room still gives me sunrises." That response revealed something extraordinary. Peace often comes when expectations become smaller and gratitude becomes larger. One reason many older adults struggle emotionally is because they continue measuring their lives against impossible standards. They compare themselves to others. They compare themselves to younger versions of themselves. They compare reality to old dreams, and comparison steals peace. At 70, the heart begins craving something far more healing than comparison. Contentment. Not because life became perfect, but because the soul finally grows tired of fighting reality. Contentment says, "My life may not have been easy, but it still carried beauty. I may have lost many things, but not everything. I may not have become who I imagined, but I still became someone worthy." That last sentence matters deeply. You are not a failure because life became difficult. You are not worthless because certain dreams never happened. You are not forgotten because the world moves quickly. Your life still holds meaning. Sometimes, the most powerful lives are the quiet ones nobody applauds publicly. The mother who sacrificed everything for her children. The father who worked exhausting jobs for decades. The grandmother who kept the family together through hard seasons. The man who remained kind despite heartbreak. The woman who survived loneliness without losing compassion. These lives matter deeply, but old age can become emotionally painful when people only focus on what they lost instead of what they gave. A nurse who worked with elderly patients for over 30 years once shared something heartbreaking. She said many dying people did not talk about money or achievements during their final days. Most talked about love, family, memories, forgiveness, and peace. Very few said, "I wish I had worked more." That reveals an important truth about life itself. The soul does not hunger for perfection in the end. It hungers for peace, and peace often begins when you release the painful fantasy of the perfect life. Because no such life exists. There are only human lives, messy lives, beautiful lives, broken lives, healing lives, real lives, and your life, with all its scars and unexpected turns, still carries incredible value. Perhaps you made mistakes. Perhaps some dreams faded away. Perhaps life wounded you in ways nobody fully understands. But you also survived. You kept going through seasons that could have destroyed you. You loved people. You endured loss. You carried burdens. You continued living even after heartbreak. That is not failure. That is courage. So maybe now, at 70, life is asking you to stop mourning the story you never received, and finally embrace the story you actually lived. Not because it was perfect, but because it was yours. And there is deep peace in finally accepting that. At 70 years old, life begins speaking in a quieter voice, not through loud achievements, not through competition, not through endless ambition, but through silence, through reflection, through truth. And if there is one truth many people finally discover in old age, it is this: peace does not come from having everything. Peace comes from releasing what no longer belongs in your heart. For most of life, people are taught to hold on tightly. Hold on to success. Hold on to control. Hold on to expectations. Hold on to relationships. Hold on to youth. Hold on to old identities. But aging slowly teaches something completely different. It teaches the beauty of letting go. Let go of regret. Let go of bitterness. Let go of the need to control everything. Let go of the fear of growing old. Let go of the life you thought you were supposed to have. Because the heavier the heart becomes, the harder it is to feel peace. There was an old woman named Evelyn who lived quietly in a small countryside home during the final years of her life. A young neighbor visited her often and once asked her a question many people secretly wonder about. What is the most important lesson life taught you? Evelyn smiled gently before answering. That almost everything I worried about never deserved so much of my peace. What wisdom! How many nights were lost to fear? How many years were wasted carrying anger? How many beautiful moments were missed because the mind stayed trapped in pain, guilt, or disappointment? At 70, people begin understanding something younger generations often overlook: time is not endless. And because time becomes more precious, peace becomes more precious too. Suddenly, simple things matter more. A calm morning, a healthy day, a kind conversation, a warm cup of coffee, a familiar voice, a peaceful heart. These small moments begin feeling sacred. The soul no longer hungers for noise. It hungers for rest. Many older adults spend years searching for happiness in places that never truly satisfied them. Some chased money. Some chased approval. Some chased perfection. But eventually, age reveals the truth. Inner peace was never something outside of you. It was always hidden beneath the emotional weight you carried for too long. One of the saddest things in life is seeing someone reach old age still fighting battles from decades ago. Still angry, still resentful, still ashamed, still trapped in the past. Not because healing was impossible, but because letting go felt frightening. Pain can strangely become familiar. Even suffering becomes a habit after many years. But peace requires courage too. The courage to forgive yourself. The courage to forgive others. The courage to accept change. The courage to release unrealistic expectations. The courage to stop punishing yourself for being human. A retired doctor once shared something powerful before his death. He said, "In the end, nobody escapes pain. But the people who find peace are the ones who stop resisting life." That sentence carries deep truth. Life was never meant to be perfect. It was meant to be lived, and your life, with all its heartbreaks, scars, memories, mistakes, victories, losses, and lessons, still carries meaning, even now, especially now. At 70, some people mistakenly believe their most important years are behind them. But emotional wisdom often arrives late in life. Many older adults finally become softer, kinder, more grateful, more honest, more compassionate. Not because life became easier, but because suffering taught them what truly matters. And perhaps that is one of the hidden gifts of aging. The soul slowly stops pretending. You no longer need to impress everyone. You no longer need to prove your worth constantly. You no longer need to carry every burden alone. You begin realizing that your value was never based on productivity, appearance, or perfection. Your value comes from your humanity, from the love you gave, from the struggles you survived, from the kindness you showed during difficult seasons, from simply continuing forward when life became painful. That matters deeply. There is a beautiful kind of freedom that arrives when a person finally accepts themselves completely. Not the younger version. Not the stronger version. Not the imagined version. The present version. The real version. Wrinkles, memories, losses, wisdom, scars, and all. Because peace begins the moment you stop fighting yourself. An elderly man once sat quietly beside a lake during sunset. Someone asked him what he feared most about aging. He smiled softly and replied, "I feared becoming old. But now I only fear wasting the time I still have left." That answer touches something deep inside the human heart, because none of us truly know how many sunsets remain, how many conversations remain, how many mornings remain. And that is exactly why peace matters now more than ever. Not tomorrow, not someday. Now, maybe there are still painful memories living inside your heart tonight. Maybe there are regrets you still carry quietly. Maybe there are wounds nobody else sees. But perhaps life is gently asking you something important. What would happen if you finally put those burdens down? Not because the pain was small. Not because the losses did not matter. But because your soul deserves rest after carrying them for so many years. You have already survived so much. You survived heartbreak. You survived grief. You survived disappointment. You survived fear. You survived seasons that could have destroyed you completely. And after all those years, you are still here, still breathing, still learning, still growing, still capable of peace. So as this chapter of life continues, may you stop carrying what no longer serves your heart. May you forgive yourself for being imperfect. May you release the bitterness that steals your joy. May you stop fearing the natural passing of time. May you embrace the life you truly lived instead of mourning the one you imagined. And most importantly, may you finally understand that peace was never found in controlling life. It was found in gently accepting it.